So what is stereotypic behaviour? We define them as a behaviour that is performed without seemingly a purpose and at a frequency or intensity that exceeds the normal range of behaviour observed. The causes of these changes in normal behaviour to occur has been attributed to many reasons. However, in domestic animals it is generally accepted that it is exacerbated by the effects of poor husbandry and care or to a failed coping mechanism in the animal. What is known is once an animal starts performing these stereotypic behaviours in their behavioural repertoire, the behaviour will continue to persist. To put it simply, these stereotypic behaviours appear to come around from stresses on the animal. These actions, so starting out as a response to stress, will then persist once the stress event has ceased, and then will become routine in their performance. These stereotypic behaviours have been also termed under the disorder of obsessive-compulsive disorder due to their obsessive and routine actions. Here we look at 3 groups of domestic animals and the specific stereotypic behaviours seen in them. In domestic avian species, we see a range of stereotypic behaviours performed. In the 2 major groups found in domestic circumstances, parrot and poultry, similar stereotypes are seen that are performed in slightly different ways. In both groups, feather pecking is seen. This is where the bird overpreens to the point of pulling feathers out to such an extreme to result in baldness. This baldness is seen notably on the chest and leg areas that are in reach to the bird itself. Route tracing is also seen in both groups. This is where the bird will repeat a route around its enclosure, repeating exact foot placements in a cyclical manner. In parrots, the stereotypic behaviour known as spot pecking has been observed, where the animal focuses on a spot and pecks repeatedly with no clear goal. A similar behaviour is seen in poultry. This form, however, only occurs after feeding events and persists once the food is run out. It is known as post-feed pecking. In parrots, a more extreme form of stereotypic behaviour is self-biting, a behaviour also classified as self-mutilation. Here the bird will obsessively bite at the digits or chest. This can lead to the loss of digits or even the exposure of organs in the chest cavity. This is an extreme form of stereotypic behaviour. Lastly, in poultry, displaced preening is seen. This is similar to feather pecking that we mentioned before. However, this form is not a self-inflicted action, but instead will occur when a bird overpreens a neighbouring bird. This behaviour will still result in feather pulling and baldness in the birds, but in different locations to that seen with feather pecking. These behaviours become very fixated into a bird's repertoire. The reasons for these stereotypical behaviours have been theorised, with many being theorised to be the result of the same triggering event. Feather pecking is seen to come about from a range of events, and is one of the most commonly seen behaviours. Poor husbandry, a limiting environment, and little to no stimulation are all common factors in birds that develop this. However, recent studies have shown that maternal deprivation has a strong link to birds developing a feather-pecking stereotype. Many of these behaviours such as feather-pecking, self-biting, route tracing, and displacement preening appear to be the result of frustration in the animal, whether it be mild short-term frustration event or an intense long-term event. It has however been theorised that spot pecking and other such pecking stereotypes could be due to event anticipation rather than a negatively stressing event. When we put these behaviours to Tim Bergen's 4 questions, it can be difficult to answer them. Why are they performing the behaviour? In birds that are often caged in non-stimulating environments, it would be plausible that these behaviours are a source of stimulation for them. How did these behaviours evolve? These behaviours are most likely due to the effects of these animals being in captivity, as these behaviours are not seen in their wild counterparts. What causes the behaviour to be performed? Frustration events due to a limiting environment preventing natural behaviours being able to be performed by the animals are the most likely cause. How is the behaviour developed in the animal's lifetime? In birds, it can be said that the development of these behaviours have been formed by the poor husbandry and conditions we as humans put them in. Without these conditions, the behaviours would unlikely form. Next we look at domestic cats and dogs. Though stereotypes are found, they are less observed than seen in birds before, due to the conditions we keep our cats and dogs in being a more enriching environment in general. In domestic cats, we see notably wool-sucking being a defining stereotype for the species. Wool-sucking, or suckling, is, as the name suggests, when an individual will suckle on a piece of cloth. Pacing is seen in both cats and dogs, but more predominantly in cats, and is the same as the route tracing mentioned previously, where a path within the confinements the animal finds himself in is repeated cyclically. Over-grooming is the third animal's equivalent of feather pecking. In cats, it is predominantly seen on the stomach and groin area, where grooming will persist to the loss of hair and will lead to skin damage and blistering. Cats are seemingly not well suited to confinement. However, if confinement is the norm from kittenhood, the cat will be unlikely to develop stereotypes due to the confinement later on. Stereotypes of domestic dogs are generally seen more in kennelled individuals. However, that does not mean a dog that remains within a home cannot develop these stereotypic behaviours. Circling or tail chasing is predominantly seen in kennelled dogs and will be performed cyclically. The dog will spin on one spot during this behaviour. Paw lifting, as the name suggests, is where the dog will hold their paw aloft for extended periods of time. Self-injury, as seen in parrots before, is a form of self-mutilation that can result in the loss of digits or the end of the tail. Over-chewing of the flanks and feet are also classified under this stereotypic behaviour. Licking persistence is a form of over-grooming that results in the formation of lick granulomas. This can be on the paw area as well as in the inner leg. If a dog is more active, a stereotype will be performed less. Wool suckling is known to be caused by kittens being weaned too early from their mothers. This behaviour is the persistence of the desire to suckle from the mothers and is seen to continue into adulthood in early weaned kittens. Pacing appears to be seen in cats that have no suitable hiding places. Majority of stereotypes in dogs appear to be linked with the inadequate environment that restrictive housing such as kennelling provides, with the size of the kennel, not the amount of time spent within it, being the deciding factor. Many kennel dogs are kept in solitary conditions, which results in social needs of the dogs not being fulfilled. Many dogs that perform stereotypes are from working breeds. It would be likely that these stereotypes derive from frustration due to the lack of stimulation and the limiting environment they are in. Let's put these behaviours to Tim Bergen's 4 questions again. Why are they performing the behaviour? In cats, we can see that a need is being fulfilled through their stereotypic behaviours, a need for safety. In dogs, a need for stimulation. How did the behaviour evolve? These behaviours are likely due once again to the effects of these animals being domesticated and kept in captivity. What causes the behaviour to be performed? This is still being caused by frustration events due to a limiting environment preventing natural behaviours being able to be performed by the animals, like we see in domestic birds. How is the behaviour developed in the animal's lifetime? In dogs and cats, though they are given a more comfortable lifestyle than many domestic species, the natural behaviours that their wild counterparts would be performing are limited to them, thus causing frustration in the animals. Stereotypes in domestic rodents are well documented due to their use in laboratories. Rats have low rates of developing them, whereas there is a much higher rate seen in mice and hamsters. Majority of stereotypes are shared within the group. Backflipping and mouthing bars are commonly seen in caged individuals. Backflipping is persistent and happens cyclically. The individuals repeatedly will backflip off a surface. Mouthing bars is very common as well in caged individuals. The individual will mouth or chew on bars. This will be performed obsessively. Individuals that provided running wheels can develop stereotypical wheel running, where this behaviour moves from a naturalistic behaviour being performed to a persistent stereotypy. Digging is a stereotypic behaviour that is exclusively seen in gerbils. This occurs in caged corners and enclosures with substrate. Barbering happens more commonly in mice, but occurs in cases where multiples are housed together. Like the displaced preening seen in poultry, this is where a severe level of over-grooming occurs to the degree of leaving a mouse almost completely bald. Backflipping, bar mouthing, and wheel running have been found to be linked strongly in early weaning, as seen in wool sucking in domestic cats. There are also theories that backflipping and bar mouthing stereotypes develop from failed escape attempts, with the behaviours involved in these attempts forming into a persistent and routine habit. The stereotypic digging in gerbils is seemingly from a lack of burrows, as when artificial burrows are provided, the behaviour lessens. Why are they performing the behaviour? In rodents, it appears to be to fulfil a need for shelter or freedom. How did the behaviour evolve? Once again, these behaviours are formed from captivity. Wild counterparts who are put in captivity, having been wild-born, do not develop these stereotypes, but their captive offspring will. What causes the behaviour to be performed? The environment they are placed in appear to be the defining features that cause these behaviours to be formed. How is the behaviour developed in the animal's lifetime? These behaviours develop due to the animal's want to perform natural behaviours, and their environment preventing this being able to occur. So overall, what did Tim Bergen's question show us in regards to stereotypic behaviours in domesticated animals, considering the examples that we have seen above? The function of the stereotypic behaviours can still not be defined for certain, but some theories suggest that some form of comfort or relief is provided to the animal while performing them. The evolution to all these behaviours is due to the confinement that domestication and captivity imposes to an individual. Causation of these behaviours overall could be said to be due to natural needs and wants not being able to be met by the individual. And finally, the development of these behaviours can be ultimately put down to the frustration or stress of the environment and husbandry these individuals are experiencing. Further research is required in this field for it to be fully understood.